Language allows us to establish and trigger connections between pieces of the world and patterns in the brain. But we also use language to shield ourselves from those very same connections. Anything that makes us feel uncomfortable can be softened with the euphemism, a choice of words that doesn't feel quite as harsh. And when a word gets tainted by its connotations, we can always replace it with a fresh one. But it's not just bodily functions that make us feel uncomfortable. Two common sources of discomfort are our own mortality and our own morality. To avoid being too explicit, we may say someone is getting on, will mourn the dearly departed, and try to minimize collateral damage. For the discomfort of killing animals for food, we use a linguistic barrier. Cow becomes beef, pig becomes pork, and even with chicken, which looks like it might be the same word, there is no confusion between chicken wings and a chicken's wing, because the word has been separated into two linguistic entities. To see how distinct they are, try rephrasing the question, "Do you eat chicken?" as, "Do you eat chickens?" In contrast, the life and death boundary is one we prefer to blur when we euthanize and euphemize our beloved pets. For our own species, of course, it's all the more troubling that life ends, for our loved ones and then for us. Hence the preference to speak of resting, or in terms that imply relocation rather than termination. But what about creating people in the first place? Do we feel discomfort about creating a person with the capacity to suffer and awareness of their own mortality? The language that we use indicates that we do. When we speak of bringing someone into the world, it implies relocation rather than creation, just like those end-of-life euphemisms. Another expression we use, to give life, implies the pre-existence of someone receiving the gift of life, and the symmetry in this case is with the euphemism for murder. The most common term of all, to have children, is very revealing when examined closely. Firstly, we use the same word both to denote a specific age group and as a general word for offspring, regardless of age. Secondly, we use the same word for something in our possession, such as young children, and for the creation of that something. So a sentence that would have carried the full weight of what is really being said is never spoken, because the harsh words are replaced with an expression that is more palatable due to its ambiguity. Far from just skipping over the sex, the words lighten the weight of responsibility, making one of the most fundamental and practical questions in ethics sound less consequential than a distant thought from the philosophy of engineering. The evidence for this preference among humans comes not only from the richness of English verbal phrases that seem to evade the meaning of procreation, but also from outside of English. When we look at translations of this unsettling question, a pattern begins to emerge, indicating that the need for this kind of verbal camouflage is prevalent across languages and cultures. 12 years ago, a best-selling author made a significant contribution to the conversation on food ethics by stripping away the euphemisms and challenging what we took for granted. Are humans ready to bring into question what used to be unquestionable and have an honest conversation about the ethics of procreation? We're getting there.